It's always something, folks. Always something. Hey, guys, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Sorry about the late start. I was trying something new, and that's probably not the greatest idea to do on the night of a night of a live stream. But you know, sometimes you just got to go for it. So let's switch over here. Good evening, Ham Radio 2.0. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm K6ARK. And tonight we're going to be talking about antennas. I'm going to bring on Adam here in just a few minutes. Gosh, did anybody see on Facebook today that the pollen counts were all up? Somebody posted like a chart that said all the pollen counts were up, and the ragweed and all this other junk that was going on. So everybody's talking about some kind of the allergies and whatnot. Everybody's talking about allergies and whatnot. So I got to get the chat over here where I can read it. There we go. So, okay. Yeah, Ham Harder, Don. Good deal. Okay, bring him over here. All right, guys, I want to show y'all some guests. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Which one is this?
That's Barbara.
Barbara. This is Barbara. She's a little puppy. We do a puppy rescue, and we got these two dogs from the through a rescue organization called Dallas Pets Alive, and they were pulled from the Mesquite Animal Shelter, and she and her sister were dropped off by a backyard breeder, and he was breeding dogs for who knows what reason, but he didn't like these two for whatever reason, so he didn't take care of them. I don't think they were abused, but they were neglected, and you stink. Here. And that one's got a small wound on her head. This one here, if you look, she's got a 90-degree bend in her elbow right here. Her elbow's bent 90 degrees right there. And we took them to a vet just a couple days ago and got them checked out. And they're all healthy. They got worms, but puppies often have worms when they come out of a shelter. The big yawn there. But they said that we were wondering if this broken foot here was abuse or birth defect, and the vet says that they believe it was a birth defect. So it doesn't look like they've been abused, just neglected. But they are going to be here for a couple months while they get all their shots. They're about just under a month old. They're like 28 days old, 29 days old, something like that, and they're going to be here for a bit. I have a dog rescue channel. Here, you can take them. Thank you. I have a dog rescue channel. I recorded a video about him already and put him on my dog rescue channel a minute ago, a couple days ago. So I'll share that with you here in a minute. But yeah, good deal. So fun times over here because dog rescue is always fun. It's something we've been doing for a long, long time. We got all of our dogs through a rescue organization. Thank you, Foster Bass. Thank you for the super chat tonight. That does bring up a good something I wanted to mention. Super chats. So for the last couple of live streams, I've been saying that I'm going to do a drawing at the end of the night for a T-shirt, T-shirt of your choice, style, color, size, from shop.hamradio2.com to one winner out of everybody who donates to the super chat tonight. 2 weeks ago, Greg Miller. User Greg Miller won, and Greg, I'm hoping that you're watching one of these days because I don't have your contact info, buddy. Send me an email, kc5hwb@gmail.com. I want to be sure to get you a T-shirt like I promised you that I would. Additionally to that, we did a giveaway on my... Mute that. We did a giveaway on my lunchtime live stream, and David KB5EDB won the T-shirt, and he called me afterwards. He's like, hey, man, give that to the next person. It's cool. He goes, I just wanted to donate. So tonight, I'm giving away two things. So 2 T-shirts tonight to the top 2 winners. One of them courtesy of David KB5EDB. He works with the Tornado Alert folks, and they're going to be donating a Tornado Alert weather device to my giveaway for my 50,000 subscriber count breakthrough that I will be breaking here shortly. So I'm going to open that and pour it Tonight I'm drinking, we're going to find out what Adam's drinking here in a minute. Tonight I'm drinking Resolute Brewing. This is from Denver, Colorado. Down with the Thickness, a winter warmer. So I was up there about a month ago transporting dogs for our dog rescue from Texas to Denver, and that's where I got that. So, okay, last thing I'll say before I bring Adam on. Let me go over here. I got to, no, not that. This right here. Make sure I get the right. Hey, Don, thanks for the super chat. So, Foster, Don Izzo. I'm going to make sure I keep track of those. Let's see. That's not right. Okay, bear with me 1 second. I lost my, I don't know where that went, but I think that Streamlabs is acting weird. So I came in here earlier today and set up everything, and it worked great. And then I relaunched it right before the show, and guess what? It doesn't want to cooperate. So let me switch over here real quick. Saturday, this coming Saturday, which is the 29th, I think it is, 26th. Saturday the 26th, and the following Saturday, October 3rd, the North Richland Hills Club, which is a club just right that way, right on the other side of the Hearst Club, who's the one who I've done all the technician and general classes for up to date. The North Richland Hills Club is going to be doing a general class over Zoom that they are inviting people to. So if you want to upgrade from technician to general, they'll be doing a class over Zoom. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I emailed them and asked them if they would allow me to live stream that class, and they came back just a couple days ago and said yes. I've got a meeting with them tomorrow to hammer out the details, but I'm going to be live streaming the class on YouTube, so we'll have a YouTube chat going. But at the same time, they are inviting people to their Zoom session to come in and have like an interactive question and answer thing during the general class. It'll be 2 Saturdays, like 8:30 to what's it say? 8:30 to 5:30 p.m. I don't know if it'll really go that late. But 2 Saturdays in a row, September 26th, October 3rd, we're going to be live streaming it. They're going to have an interactive chat. In order to, if you want to sign up for the class, you need to shoot an email to W5HP, Whiskey 5, Hotel Papa, at att.net. Put in there that you heard about it on this show. It would help me out a little bit. I don't get anything for it, but, you know, I just want him to know that I'm promoting the class, and it's a general class. And it's same question pool about the general class that's already up on my channel, but this one will have a Zoom session that you can ask live questions. It should be a good time, so I'm looking forward to live streaming that. Okay, let me get back to all these super chats here. Don, I got you. Tim, W8NGT, thank you very much, sir. W8NGT. And Philip, W0RHP, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you guys tonight. And then temporary offline, KM9G. Appreciate that, Steve. All good there. Okay. Frank is not with me tonight. He had some family stuff to do tonight. He said he might show up in the chat. I didn't see if he's in there yet. Smoking Apes in the chat. Tio's in the chat. Chuck is in the chat. I saw Izzo in there. I saw a name in there. Tom's in there. Thanks for joining us tonight, Tom. So let me switch over here, Zoom window right there, and to Adam. There you go. You are on now. Good evening.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me here tonight, Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Got out for SOTA activation today. Took the new-to-me mountain bike out for the first time.
Cool.
And kept from going over the bars. Stayed upright, and
that's good.
Got an activation in as well.
That's good. Now the fires in California aren't near you, right?
No, we had one in San Diego County, and it's pretty much, I think, 90 or 100% contained at this point.
Okay.
And it was down south of me, kind of closer to the border.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I know there's a lot of you guys, a lot of you YouTuber guys out there in California. Josh said he said it would have to burn through the whole OC to get to him, so he's quite a ways away from it. But you know, it's like you watch the news and they act like the whole state's on fire. So, anyway, I'm glad everybody's safe out there. So, Good. Okay, so take a few minutes and tell everyone about your channel. Adam does a really good channel on YouTube, just called K6ARK. I'll let him tell you about it. But he has some really beautiful, scenic videos up there, stuff that I can't get in Texas. But go ahead, man. Tell us about your stuff.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, my channel is K6ARK Portable Radio, and I focus on primarily summits on the air activations and portable operations. It's a mix of my adventures in the mountains and also various projects and builds that I do. I love building antennas. That's one of my favorite parts of the ham radio hobby. And if you look through my videos, some of the most popular ones are videos of antenna projects for QRP portable operation.
And when you do QRP, you do a lot of CW.
I do a lot of CW. I do some sideband as well, but I generally prefer to take advantage of the roughly 12 dB signal to noise advantage that CW gives you. Yeah. So I typically operate CW, but I love hearing people's voices too, and I pretty regularly still carry out a 100-watt rig to operate from summits on CW and sideband, for that matter.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. Several videos you've trekked that 891 up the mountain, so that's fun. Of course, that radio's not overly heavy or overly bulky. I guess that's probably a good choice if you want to do 100 watts. I'm assuming.
It really is. I have an 891 now. I just bought it, but I've been using an FT857.
That's right.
And so I'm really looking forward to that new rig. They're about the same weight, but the filtering in it should be significantly better.
Yeah, when I had an 891 for a short period of time, the filtering was much better than. I never had an 857, but I did have a 706 Mark II-G, which of course is older technology than an 891, and the filtering on the 891 was fantastic. I really liked it. Yeah. So good. Okay, so yeah, your sound was a little bit low. I was turning that up. I think we're good. Cool, man. So we're going to talk about antennas tonight. Everybody that has, let me acknowledge a super chat. Peter, I got your name on the list. Thank you much for the super chat donation. I just wanted to make sure that was up there. So we're going to talk about antennas tonight. I'll try to watch the chat as much as I can. Frank's not here, but some of you other guys who are mods can help out if you don't mind. And Adam, I'll just go ahead and let you have it. You said you had a couple of screen share things to share, so if you want to go ahead and share your screen, I'll make sure that the sharing thing on this side doesn't kind of screw it up a bit.
Okay. Yeah, the screen share stuff is more for getting into the weeds on some specific stuff. If you had some photos you wanted to show,
sure, yeah, I can.
Any antennas?
I can start with that. Okay, so let me go over here and go screenshot files there. There we go. Okay, 1 second here. Yeah, let me.
Cool.
I've got yeah, Streamlabs, man. I don't know what it did. I went like I said, I was going through and I set up everything and it was like, oh yeah, that's all good. And then I restarted because I always like to restart it before I go live. But I don't know. It kind of freaked out on me. So I've got a couple things here. So you guys bear with me for a second. And
well, I can kind of start chatting a little bit generally about antennas.
Good.
So some of the topics we wanted to kind of cover tonight and talk a little bit about. And I think one of the fundamental things to understand about antennas is that every antenna is a compromise. There is no perfect antenna, just like radios. There is no perfect antenna, even for a single situation, let alone every situation that you might find yourself in out there. So I think that's kind of a foundational starting point to start from there. Why don't you go ahead and note that super chat there, Jason?
Oh, okay, Don, N5SKT, thanks a lot, man. Got you on the list tonight. Appreciate the donation.
Very nice. So a little background about me. I am a mechanical engineer, and I was kind of joking with Jason and in the chat earlier that I thought it was a little funny to drag a mechanical engineer onto the live stream here for a chat about antennas. I've learned some things, don't know everything, but hopefully I can share from a non-RF expert perspective some of kind of the key things that I've learned that might be valuable to you. That note about antennas all being a compromise comes down to what I like to categorize into sort of 3 competing factors about every antenna. And excuse me, those 3 factors start with size. The size of the antenna makes a difference in how well it's going to function. And that size factor competes with the efficiency or gain that you can get out of that antenna. The third factor that competes with those other 2 is bandwidth or multi-band functionality. So every time you're looking at an antenna, you're really going to be kind of considering how those 3 things are competing against each other and what your priorities are out of those things. You're not going to find a high gain, super efficient multi-band antenna that's small. It just doesn't exist. You're not going to find, you look at the little mini telescopic whips from MFJ or the AX1 from Elecraft.
Yes.
And they're tiny. They're awesome. They're some of them are even multi-band with some sort of added functionality, loading coils and such.
Right.
But you really sacrifice efficiency on that. So so I think those are all elements to consider in looking at different antennas.
Cool. I've got the screen I've got up on the feed right now is what is an off-center fed dipole, and it shows a difference. This is actually an image I got from SOTA. I think this one came from the SOTA Beams website, which SOTA Beams makes a great antenna. But it talks about how the feed point is in the center of the wire for a center fed, and it's off-center for an off-center fed, which is obviously, if it's center fed, off-center fed, it depends on where the feed line attaches to the wire and how much wire is on both the left hand and the right hand side of the feed line. So that kind of makes it center fed and off center fed. And center fed antennas typically are monoband, because you center feed, you can cut in an antenna for half wave 20 meters, half wave 40 meters, even half wave 80 or 160 meters, and any band really. Yeah, I've seen half wave 2 meter antennas and center fed, and it's an equal side of wire on both sides of the feed point. So those are typically more of your monoband antennas, which for those radios that don't have a tuner, hint hint about one that's about to come out, or about radios that where maybe you don't have a tuner, maybe it has a tuner port on it but not an internal tuner, like the 891. I don't think it. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. I might be. The 891 doesn't have an internal tuner, does it?
No tuner.
Okay. But your Elecraft QRP radios, the KX line, they have an internal tuner that you can add to it. It doesn't come with it. It's everything Elecraft is modular, so you can purchase an ATU and install it. And I did that in my KX3, and it works quite well. And a lot of your Xiegu, Xiegu radios have internal tuners in them. So it depends on what you get, but for a center-fed dipole, you're going to want to make sure the wire length is cut to whatever band you use it for, and then you're pretty much, with the exception of like 40 meters and 15 meters, which are harmonics, you're pretty much limited to one band, typically speaking. There are some exceptions to that.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the advantages that you mentioned the off-center fed dipole. So if you take a 40-meter dipole, 20 meters of wire roughly, feed it at the center. It'll work on 40 meters, and it'll work decent on 15 as well. Kind of the third harmonic. When you move that feed point to about 25% of the way in from the end, a quarter of the way in from the end, your feed point impedance goes up because you're feeding it at a higher voltage location on that resonant wire. So you need to use a 4-to-1 balun typically to feed it there and still get a nice match to your coax. But you gain resonance on 20 meters and 10 meters as well. So that 40-meter dipole now becomes, or 40-meter/15-meter dipole now becomes 40, 20, 15, and 10, which is pretty sweet. You can do the same thing with an 80-meter dipole and feed it off center. There's a couple of places you can feed it to get different bands. I have one set up at my house here, fed about 20% of the way in from the end, about 1/5 of the way in. And that one is resonant or close enough to it for the IC7300 to run on 80 meters, 40, 20, 17, 12, 10, and 6. So you get, what is that, 7 or 8 bands out of an off-center fed dipole.
With no tuner.
With no tuner,
yeah.
Right. So it's a pretty cool multi-band setup. You make some trade-offs in efficiency when you get that extra bandwidth. Just from having to have that matching unit, that 4-to-1 balun built into the system, and you end up with kind of some slightly imperfect match on some of the bands with those because they're not perfectly resonant there. A note from, I see KN6GZE noting that Adam likes to have his 300-foot towers in his pack. I don't carry the towers, I climb the towers. I go up the mountaintops, and they are my 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 foot towers.
Right. All right. Mountaintop towers. Good.
Yeah.
I was reading about that off center fed because I asked you about that a couple weeks ago, and you sent me to the website that for the build instructions for that antenna. And I found it interesting that they have 2 different ways to build. I think at least 2 different ways to build it, where if you change the feed point just a little bit, instead of 1/5 of the way in, if you put it like 1/4 of the way in, it takes away 17 meters, but it gives you 15 meters.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, man, you can really play around with that because you can have an in-fed antenna. So I guess in theory, you could feed it kind of wherever you want to and just kind of tinker around with it and see what kind of bands it was resonant on, or maybe not resonant, but what bands it was flat on with a radio that for multi-band purposes. But it's kind of something fun to play around with if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, it really is. And you can... There are, it's probably a little too much in the weeds for this discussion, but when I was sort of making my planning to build that antenna, I actually made an Excel spreadsheet with all the bands, the frequencies, and lengths in from the end, and I kind of just figured out numerically what feed point would be optimal for different bands, and I came across that one and 20% of the way in, and found that it would give me 17 and 12. So I was pretty psyched on that and ended up building it that way. It worked out well.
Cool. Good.
Yeah. So awesome. I saw a name mentioning or asking what I meant by efficiency in the antenna, and there's a couple of elements to that, gain and efficiency. And the first law of thermodynamics comes into play there, right? We can't create or destroy energy; it can only change form.
Right.
And when we're sending RF into our antenna, we're sending 100% of our energy in the form of RF into the antenna, and ideally, we want 100% of that RF to be converted to electromagnetic waves that get radiated off ideally in the direction we want it to go. So those are kind of the 2 pieces there, right? How much of the RF going into the antenna and the coax make it up into space and in the atmosphere as radiated electromagnetic waves, and then which direction it goes. So talking about the efficiency side of things, when you have a small antenna or a poorly matched antenna that you have to use an ATU, an antenna transmatch unit, or as we like to refer to them, tuners, you lose some efficiency there. You're sacrificing some of the power, just converting it to heat, basically, or reflecting it back to the radio or the tuner and converting it to heat there. And it's not getting radiated from the antenna. The other piece, the gain side of things, or pointing that energy where you want it to go, is a critical piece as well. You'll find that with, say, a quarter wave vertical antenna, you end up having typically a lower angle radiation pattern. You lose some efficiency to your ground radials. You're sending some, portion of your energy, more so than a dipole, just into the ground. But your peak angle of radiation and your radiation close to the horizon is significantly greater than a dipole that's not really high elevated off the ground. And that's why antennas like the DX Commander work so well for DX. Even though they may not be the most efficient antenna, they're putting the radiated energy where you want it to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so efficiency is important, because if you have an inefficient antenna, like you were saying, and that requires a tuner, then you're not going to be pushing out full power. I mean, that's one drawback of it. It's not the only drawback, but that's one drawback of it. Talk about, if you don't mind, resonance and what's the difference between tunability and resonance. That's a question that we didn't discuss, and I'm curious about what your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. So the way I look at it, and the sort of the technical definition of resonance, is an antenna or a circuit that has no so it's just resistance to we're familiar with resistors and DC, direct current flowing through a resistor, and it restricts the flow of the current, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Impedance is restriction to the flow of current of an alternating current, and there are two components to that. There is the resistive impedance, and there's the reactive impedance. The resistive impedance is constant across the, for relative to frequency. Mm-hmm. The reactive impedance varies with frequency. When your reactive impedance is 0, your antenna is resonant. So that's kind of just a fundamental reactive and resistive impedance there. And that actually all goes back to the Smith chart. Mm-hmm. I know how much we all loved trying to figure out the dang Smith chart when we were studying for our extra exam, but that thing's actually really valuable, and it's not that complicated. So that horizontal axis, moving to the left on the Smith chart, is your resistance, your resistive impedance, and the vertical axis is your reactive impedance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what makes an antenna tunable or why would you want a non-resonant antenna? Well, right. If you have a resonant antenna, let's say a 40-meter dipole, we know it's going to have extremely high reactive impedance on 20 meters. Mm-hmm. So if you want to use the same antenna for 40 meters and 20 meters, you're going to either have to get creative with it, as far as something like a fan dipole, or another alternative is to essentially build an antenna that's not resonant on either of those bands, so that the reactive impedance isn't that bad on either of those bands, and let the antenna transmatch unit, your tuner, sort that all out. Mm-hmm. And it actually works quite well. Mm-hmm.
Transmatch is a much better way to say that than antenna tuner, because an antenna tuner doesn't actually tune your antenna. It changes the reactance and the impedance, if I'm not mistaken, between the antenna and the radio, so that it doesn't damage your radio. So it doesn't really tune the antenna. That's just a pleasant way to think of it. So it's acting as if it tunes the antenna, but it's doing that all in circuitry rather than changing the length of your antenna. So okay, so let me acknowledge KE4HZC. Glenn, thank you very much for the super chat tonight. And also Dawson, who is a new patron, actually, of mine. Dawson Lightfoot, KI5KMQ. Thank you to both of you guys for the super chat tonight. I've got you on the list for a T-shirt drawing for 2 people at the end of the night tonight. So thanks for being here. And please do ask your questions. Anybody who's who's donated in the super chat, especially ask your questions. But like questions are open to everybody. So there's some good discussion going on in the chat tonight. People are talking about doublets, and somebody said something. Okay, there's Dawson. He donated, and then he said, "Can you speak to any downsides of using a duplexer or triplexer versus an antenna switch for selecting the most appropriate antenna for the frequency used?" So the difference between an antenna switch chooses an antenna. So if you've got a radio here and two antennas here and a switch in between, then your antenna switch, whichever antenna your antenna switch is pointed at, is the only antenna that's active. So it basically ignores the entire other antenna. A duplexer takes two bands from a radio and puts them into one antenna, or it can even take two. Like if you have a 2-meter antenna and a 440 antenna going into a duplexer to a dual band radio, it's actively monitoring both the antennas at the same time, or both of the bands on the radio at the same time. You can hook it up reverse, if that makes sense. So a duplexer and triplexer is active on all 2 or 3 bands at the same time, where a switch actually switches off of whatever antenna it's not pointed at. So in a lot of cases, you'd probably would want to use both. If you have a dual band radio and you're switching back and forth between a vertical and a horizontal antenna, for instance, a NICE 9700, okay, you'd want a vertical antenna typically to work FM, to work 2-meter and 440 FM repeaters and D-star repeaters, which that radio will do. But if you want to switch your antenna to some sort of some sort of horizontal dipole or a Yagi antenna, then you would switch over, and it would be, it would ignore the vertical, but it would switch over to the horizontal or Yagi antenna, and then you could work sideband a lot easier that way. It's not that you can't work sideband with a vertical, you can, but you're going to get a lot more better results working sideband with a horizontal antenna. So a switch and a duplex are two different things, and they can be actually used together at the same time. So Adam, if you have anything to add to that, please feel free.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not real familiar with all the duplexer options out there. It looks like Dawson's looking at HF, VHF, UHF, receive only at SDR remote receivers. Interesting. Yeah, I expect that might be an option for a duplexer. I'm not familiar with, I'm VHF, UHF duplexers, but I could see how that might work for HF as well. A duplexer is really nothing more than a filter. Mm-hmm. It's just blocking RF from one direction and sending it in another direction. So it's providing a high impedance or high resistance for the RF to flow to the wrong antenna, and a low resistance or low impedance for it to flow to the right antenna. So I see some comments about power handling, and that may be a consideration if you're using it for transmit.
Yes.
And I think the last thing to note on a duplexer versus a switch, a duplexer is going to sacrifice a little bit in efficiency, just like any filter does. But any of the duplexer manufacturers should have specs on losses, insertion losses in their duplexers, and I would guess it's well under 3 dB, probably on the order of like 1 dB range. Just a guess on that.
Depends on the duplexer too. Get a
I'm sure.
Yeah, if you're gonna get a duplexer, I suggest one like a Comet or Diamond, or maybe one of the commercial brands, and not something from Amazon.
Right.
You're gonna get better performance. Not that the one from Amazon wouldn't work, but you're definitely gonna get a better performance with a proven name brand on that. So.
Depends on how much you like to gamble, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, just definitely test it out. Okay, good. All right, thank you for both of those super chats, and you guys keep the questions coming. Really appreciate everyone being here tonight. All right, cool. So I've got so right now we've got a center fed off center fed on the screen, and I'm going to switch real quick and go here. And these are just kind of some of the types of antennas that I wrote down when I was thinking about what we're going to talk about tonight. So center fed and off center fed, we talked about a little bit. A linked dipole, which has always been really interesting to me, mostly because years ago I didn't understand what that meant. Linked dipole, what are you linking it to? so it's I was like, it's important to understand what that is. But then random wire and an in-fed half wave antenna. which I did my last POTA activation. I used a random wire, and which you have to have a tuner for. A random wire, you can't. It's not resonant anywhere. It's random. But so we're going to talk about that a little bit, Adam, if you don't mind. So a linked have you ever used a linked dipole? Let me just ask you that.
Yeah, sure. Linked dipole is my go-to antenna for portable operations with 100 watts. It's easy to set up. It's simple, relatively simple to switch bands to have a multi-band antenna. The drawback to it is that you know, to change bands, you're pulling your antenna down and disconnecting or opening switches essentially, to change the length of the wire. But they're great performers. You can make them relatively compact. I built mine out of 26 gauge poly stealth wire from Davis RF. Really good stuff for portable antennas. And I use just RG174 coax with it, which is, you know, it's a little bit lossy on the higher HF bands, but it's totally fine on probably 15 meters and down with less than 2 dB of loss for 30 feet or so.
Okay. Yeah. So with a linked dipole, I understand what it is, but I'm not sure I'm going to explain it correctly. They're generally center fed, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. They're generally center fed, so you've got your center feed point, and you've got enough wire on either side, say for 20 meters. And then at the end of that wire, you've got what's called a switch or some sort of attachment, and then you can add more wire to it and make the antenna, instead of for 20 meters, you can make a 30-meter antenna. You add more wire and make it a 40-meter antenna. So it's a way of cutting off the line without actually cutting it. I think some of them you actually attach more wire to. But there's a way to like turn a switch or something that turns off the line so that the resonance of the antenna is a certain length when it's switched for 20 meters, and when you switch it to 30 meters, it makes that line longer.
Right. Yeah. So imagine this is your antenna wire where there's so this is the end of your 20-meter dipole, and you want to make this a 40-meter. So this is just one arm of the dipole. You're fed at the center here, and there's another equal one out this direction. Right here, you add more wire for a 40-meter dipole and connect those, let's say, with an Anderson power pole, since everybody's familiar with Anderson power poles.
Sure.
So we made an Anderson power pole connection there, but that can't handle much force without falling apart. And if we disconnect it, it's not going to be structurally stable for us anymore, because we want to be able to pull on the end of this wire and keep that dipole up in an inverted V structure. So what we typically do is take a piece of cord or something that will act as sort of strain relief and connect this wire to this wire with a piece of cord and put a little bit of slack in where those Anderson power poles come together. So the force is being taken up by that piece of cord. That's what holds the structural stability, and then you just make an electrical connection with whatever your chosen connectors are, say Anderson power poles.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a good way to have a center-fed multi-band antenna. So if you're going for something, 26 gauge wire is actually really small. I mean, comparatively to other antennas, 26 gauge wire is pretty small. But if you're hiking up a mountain, like Adam does a lot of SOTA expedition, and he likes to have his pack as light as possible, I guess, unless he's carrying his 891. But I mean, if you're gonna have as light as possible, then a linked dipole might be a good option, because you either don't have to deploy those bands. If you're if you're operating in the middle of the day, you probably don't want a 40-meter antenna.
Right.
But if you're operating in the middle of the night, you've got that option to add to it later on. So it's a good multifunctional tool.
Yeah. 40 is actually great midday for shorter range stuff. So, and so that's kind of I typically use 20 and 40 from SOTA Summits to just have different ranges of reach, even midday. So you mentioned the end-fed half wave and end-fed random wire.
Yes.
And I think that's a great topic, because those are often confused for each other.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to separate them, like you said, because The end-fed random wire requires an ATU to match to the radio, and the end-fed half wave doesn't. It's essentially built into the antenna. So the key differences there: end-fed half wave is a resonant antenna. So remember, resonant antennas have no reactive impedance, so it's purely resistive impedance. It's a really high resistive impedance. We have to transform that down to what the radio likes, but it's a resonant antenna. The end-fed random wire is specifically a non-resonant antenna, and to get it specifically a non-resonant antenna, it's actually not a random length of wire. There are specific lengths of wire that work well because they're not resonant on any specific band. So basically what you end up with a end-fed random wire is a wire in a non-resonant length, for example, 41, 42 feet, roughly around there. I think there's like a 53-ish foot range that works well, 72 or so, and I think 85. If you search for end-fed random wire lengths, you'll find multiple web pages with fantastic info on them. At any rate, you take that random wire, and those random wires, or not so random wires, tend to present slightly high impedance, higher than 50 ohms, on the order of probably 400 ohms or so, 500 ohms, on the bands we're interested in. So we make that easier for the tuner, the ATU, to match by transforming it down with a 9-to-1 transformer, or 9-to-1 un-un. So that's an end-fed random wire. You've got the 9-to-1 un-un in there, and you've got a specific length of wire that's non-resonant that makes it easy to tune on a whole bunch of different bands.
That's what I used at my last, and it was my first time I ever used a random wire. Well, it's my first time in a long time to use a random wire. And that's what I used my last Parks in the Air activation. I strung out, and it was the 41, 42 foot one. It was made for what he called, the guy who made it, Nelson Antennas is what it was. And he's really big on eBay. And apparently, I started talking about Nelson Antennas in the Discord chat a month or two ago, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I've got one of those. Oh yeah, I've got one of those." I'm like, "Oh, I thought I'd found something new," but everybody's heard of this guy. So, but it was a 41, 42 foot random wire, and with the tuner that I was using in both the IC7300 and my Xiegu G90, I was able to tune that on. Well, I tuned it on 10 and 15, but I didn't really get any activity, so I didn't make any contacts. But I tuned it on. I tuned it on 17. I made a couple contacts there. 20. I did some 30 meter FT8 with it, and I did some 40 meter stuff at night, and it was all just on one antenna that was rated for 100 watts. So, if you've got a radio with a decent tuner inside of it, or if you're carrying an external tuner, that would work too. It's a good option for something that you don't have to keep taking down and putting back up like a linked dipole, because you do have to tune it, but and you are sacrificing efficiency, like what Adam was talking about a minute ago. But is it enough to make contacts? Yeah, I made like 275 contacts at the first park I went to. That I stayed there. I was there for 2 days, but you know, it worked really well. I was impressed the number of stations that I was able to hear and get back to on just 100 watts with the 7300. It's 100 watts on sideband, so it wasn't really 100 watts, but I thought it worked really well. I was like, man, I should have been using this thing for a lot longer, because it definitely did the job that it's doing. Yeah, somebody said it's not a random wire, is not a random length. I think you touched on this, Adam, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's a random length of wire, random to the lengths of wire you would need for multiple ham radio bands. So in other words, it's a length of wire that would not resonate on any of the bands that we talk on. So it's random somewhere in between all those bands, like it's not resonant on 20, 30, 40, 60 meters, etc. but so it's random length in there, and that's what makes it with that unbalanced matching unit on the end of it. That's what makes it tunable to those bands on multi-band. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah, it's I would say it's random, except for certain lengths that just are resonant on specific frequency, on ham frequencies. And so long as you avoid those resonant lengths, and target those lengths that are non-resonant, you'll have a much better multi-band antenna. And yeah, like you said, they're a little bit less efficient. You trade off some efficiency for that multi-band functionality. Remember, those are competing factors, right? Efficiency and multi-band functionality. So I think one more thing to mention on that is that, yeah, the KX2 can actually tune up, and KX3 for that matter, can actually tune up the 41-foot random wire that I use, 17-foot counterpoise, 41-foot random wire on 80 meters. It'll actually tune it on 80. Wow. It's not very efficient, right? Because 41 feet is a small fraction of an 80-meter, resonant length. So that tuner, that ATU, is doing a ton of work to load that up with inductance to make it look like it's a longer piece of wire. If you did the same thing with, say, an 85-foot piece of wire, random wire, it's going to be much more efficient. There was mention, Don N5SKT mentioned long wires in the chat, and Clay was asking more about a long wire. Basically, a long wire is typically kind of a random wire. It requires a tuner, from what I understand. I've never used one, but they're typically, at least I think it's 3 wavelengths long on the frequency or band of operation. And what you end up with from that, from what I understand, and someone in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that you end up with actually some gain in parallel to the wire. So off the end of the wire, you end up with some gain in that direction. Kind of an interesting setup, and from what I understand, they can work quite well. The trade-off in that case is the size, of course. If you're using 3 wavelengths on 40 meters, you're 3+ wavelengths, you're 200+ feet of wire there.
Yeah. There's almost as many of you in the chat that have your name starting with D as there is the number of you that have your name starting with Dawn. So I tagged the Smoking Ape when I was looking for the Daily Mock. So he said he was late, and I was just saying this will be available on replay. So if you missed something, or you want to go back and watch this over and over again, because Adam's dropping some really good information here, it will be there. So cool. Okay, so tell us how that differs from an end-fed half-wave. Because you were talking about how the end-fed half-wave has a built-in tuner. I think you said built-in tuner, but which is not really a tuner, but I know what you meant. So go ahead and explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's a built-in matching unit. The ATU can also manage and generally cancel out some of that reactive impedance. But because the end-fed half-wave is a resonant antenna, there's no reactive impedance. But you guys might remember I mentioned before, I think we all are pretty familiar with dipoles, and that the impedance when you feed a dipole at the center is a little more than 50 ohms. If it's a flat dipole, it's about 72 ohms. If you tilt it into an inverted V, you can get down pretty close to 50 ohms for the feed point impedance. And that's part of the reason we like that antenna so much. It's just easy to feed with our 50 ohm coax and 50 ohm output on our radios. You start to move that feed point off center, and you'll recall with the off center fed dipole that feed point impedance goes up as the current goes down and the voltage increases. So if you go all the way to the end, you're at a current minimum and a voltage maximum on that resonant piece of wire. So you end up with a really high resistive impedance, somewhere on the order of 2,000 to 4,000 ohms of resistive impedance. So to feed that with 50 ohm coax, you got to transform that down to 50 ohms. You don't have any of the reactance to deal with, ideally, if it's a resonant piece of wire, but you got to get that resistance down to 50 ohms. So we typically do that with roughly a 49-to-1 or 64-to-1 transformer, or unun in that case. And well, you can look up plenty of ways to build those. I typically build them with about 3 turns primary and 21 turns secondary, or up to 30 turns secondary, and then I adjust those turns ratios to optimize the performance for the antenna I'm building. But yeah, that's the key. That matching unit is a transformer to take that 4,000 ohms and bring it down to 50.
Cool. So when an in-fed half wave is you said it. I think what you said, it's resonant on a single band, and then it has the matching unit. But are there different lengths of an in-fed half wave? So like you got a 40-meter in-fed half wave or an 80-meter in-fed half wave that's tunable to other bands, or is that a correct statement or no?
Yeah, so they're not tunable for other bands, but just like that off-center fed dipole, they're resonant on multiples. So a 40-meter end-fed half wave will work on 20 meters, 15 meters, and 10 meters. Now, there's sometimes some fudging that you have to do with that a little bit, especially if your antenna is closer to the ground. If you trim your wire to make it resonant on 40 meters, that close proximity to the ground makes that wire feel like it's longer than it actually is. And you end up sometimes with your resonant frequencies just above the 20 meter, 15 meter, or 10 meter bands. So the other way to handle that, or to deal with that, is to use links, just like that link dipole. You can put links in your end-fed half wave, and it can work quite well. One option that I found actually works pretty good is to build a 40-meter end-fed half wave and put a link for 30 meters. And that gives me the 30-meter band, as well as, of course, resonant multiples of 40, 20, 15, 10. So it makes for a pretty nice multi-band antenna. The last option that kind of comes to mind that I often use to make an antenna multi-band is to use traps. I put out a video recently on some trap builds for mini end-fed half waves, or QRP antennas. And that's a great way to make a multi-band antenna that you don't have to mess with any switches or links or anything like that. You make some trade-offs in losses and bandwidth. So by getting that multi-band functionality, again, we go back to those trade-offs. We lose a little bit of bandwidth on the lower bands, and we lose a little bit of efficiency in those traps.
Don asks, is a 60-meter end-fed half wave not a thing?
I'm sure it could be. I think there's just not a ton of users, not a ton of traffic on the 60-meter band. I do use the 60-meter band periodically, typically on CW for shorter range contacts in the morning and during the day. So if I want like NIVIS type stuff, near vertical incident skywave, short range 200, 300 mile contacts, 60 meters actually works pretty well during the day in this time of the solar cycle. So yeah, it certainly can be a thing, and a bonus on that would be potential resonance on 30 meters. I don't know if the bands line up well enough for that to work, but they very well may.
Yeah, it seems like you could probably cut one for any length you could probably do an end-fed half wave 160 if you
I've got one.
If you were really nuts, right? So
yeah, I built one with a loading coil. Because I didn't want to have 265 feet of wire that I had to suspend in the air. I wanted to use it for SOTA for a night activation, because I'd never made a contact on 160. So I said, what the heck, man? I'm going to build a 160 meter end-fed half wave and put a loading coil in it and shortened it by about 100 feet. I ended up with kind of a narrow bandwidth on 160, but it covered a portion of the band. And made the one night that I used it, I made a summit-to-summit contact with KE6MT Rex up in central, I guess, northern-ish California, east of the Bay Area there.
We were talking about that the other day. I find it incredible that you found another station on SOTA. doing 160.
Yeah,
Two different SOTA stations on 160 at the same time. That's incredible.
There were a couple factors in that. The SOTA program put out a SOTA flavors challenge this year, and one of the flavors was to run 80 and 160. So they were kind of trying to motivate people to experiment and try different things from summits. And I also know Rex pretty well, and we kind of planned it somewhat ahead of time. I heard he was going out, and I said, "Oh, well, I'm going to go out. I'll bring my 160 antenna. You want to bring yours?"
Yeah, there you go.
So hey, it was mostly a scheduled contact.
Hey, a contact is a contact. If you made contact over the air, it doesn't matter how you got there. That's still a contact, man, in my book. That's pretty cool. That's definitely one for the books. I'd want a QSL card over that one.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Don says 6 meters is great because there's not a lot of people on it, which I would agree with. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Scott asks, what do you think of horizontal loops? I've used a horizontal loop on 2 meters and 440 to do sideband, but that's my only experience with them. I know you've got a couple of pictures in your Google Drive with loops, so what do you think about that?
Yeah, so the loops in my Google Drive photos are small transmitting loops, aka magnetic loop antennas. Those are a very different world of antenna from a full wave loop, which I think is what he's referring to there. I actually really want to build a horizontal 160 meter loop at my house here. I saw someone noting previously in the chat, maybe they can chime in again, that they had used an 80 meter horizontal loop, and they're great multi-band antennas. You do need a tuner with them, but you can operate them on multiple bands, and if you build them the right way, they don't have to be a perfect square or triangle or anything, but model it before you build it, and figure out what it's going to do on different bands, because certain shapes and certain heights above ground perform very differently than others. You may find that your 80 meter off center fed dipole performs far better than your 160 meter loop. Typically, from what I found in my experimentation with modeling, the square shape tends to work better on those resonant multiples of bands. You get nice gain lobes in various directions. So yeah, they're pretty cool antennas, and that will likely be my next home QTH antenna, is a big horizontal loop.
My house is a big square. I've got a 2-story house, and it's just a big square. That's all it is. I mean, there's not extrusions of the house on any of the 4 sides. It's square here, it's square here. So the roof is actually kind of small for the size house it is, because if you think about it in amount of area it covers on the ground, it's only half of the square feet, because half is downstairs and half is upstairs. So my roof is a big square as well. And I always thought it would be cool to try to put... I measured it at one time, and I wrote it all down. I don't remember what it was. This was several years ago. I thought, I want to put a loop around the outside edge. If I have to move it up into the house a little bit to get it to the length I want. I was thinking about a 40-meter loop at the time. I thought it would be cool to put one, about yay high off the house and just do it all around the entire house in a big square. And I thought, let's try it and see if it works. I just always went. I never did it. Because it's kind of a pain in the butt to get up on my house, because it's like the gutter is 25 feet off the ground, and I have a ladder. I have to borrow a ladder to get up there every time I want to. But I always thought that would be a fun project, though. So if you do that, you have to let me know how you did it.
Yeah. Well, I've got 1.3 acres here, so I've got some space, and a 160 meter full wave loop is about 540 feet of wire. So it's no joke.
Yeah. Well, you know what? When we were Sean Whalen asked a question. I'm gonna get to it in 1 second. When we were in Costa Rica 2 trips ago, we got a transverter. This was when 630 meters was fairly new. We got a transverter for 630 meters, and we went to a local fencing store in Costa Rica, there in the little town we were staying outside of. We bought 1,000 feet of, I think it was like 12 gauge fencing metal. It's the stuff that you tie a fence with, that like a barbed wire fence. It's like a twist tie, but they're a lot thicker than a twist tie, and it's metal.
Sure.
I think it was stainless steel. Um, and we put up like a 930 or 960 foot antenna,
Wow.
and the ranch hands out there, they went out there in the trees and they just kind of strung it up to the whole thing. It was like 960 feet, and we connected into the transverter in the matching unit we had, and we did whisper contacts, and we made contacts all over North America on 630 meters with 900 and something foot of fence wire. Which
Yeah,
I thought
that's cool.
That was just fun, man. That place is like 250 acres down there, so had plenty of room. But I'm like, man, that'd be cool to put that up. I'd have to string it halfway across town to do that at home. But it's definitely a fun experiment for sure.
Absolutely.
So Sean asked, thoughts on using a discone antenna, example of a Diamond D3000N, for quad band transceivers as well as wideband receive on a scanner. I don't think that would be very efficient. For a scanner, it'd be great. Discone antennas are great for a scanner. For a transceiver antenna, I don't think... It's not that it wouldn't work, I just don't think you'd get very good luck out of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know discone antennas super well as far as what your options are for transmitting and receiving. So the first thing I would say is go see what Diamond has to say about this, and I'm sure Sean's already done this, but since he's asking about it as a transmit antenna, just make sure it's usable as a transmit antenna. Some discones are receive only.
Yeah.
Going back to my original comment about every antenna is a compromise and there are competing factors, the discone has great multi-band capability at the trade-off of size, right? It's got a whole bunch of elements. It's conical shape, so it's kind of an inefficient shape and size, and that's your trade-off there. They're other than that, they're fantastic as multi-band or broadband antennas.
Mm-hmm.
The one last comment I would make on that is I don't know if he's planning to use it connected to both the scanner and the transmitter. To do that, you'd need obviously either an antenna switch, or an automatic. That's in way there. But if you want to use that same antenna for both things, you obviously don't want to be just splitting the cable and then when you go to transmit, sending all that power into your scanner. It's not going to be happy.
No, that's for sure. Oh, good. Okay. So I hear nothing but great reports from a hex beam antenna. Do those need a very high elevation to be effective? Actually, they don't. They don't. You don't have to have the hex beam antenna up very high. Technically speaking, you don't really have to have any HF antennas up very high. There's different ways that Adam touched on NVIS and near vertical
incident skywave.
Incident skywave. That's what I was thinking, and for some reason I thought, no, that's not right. Near vertical incident skywave, which is basically shooting your signal up into the ionosphere and having it bounce back down so that it's coming down in a closer radiation rather than sending out ground wave across this way. It depends on what you're trying to do. Okay, there's not a wrong way to... That's the cool thing about antennas. You can basically do anything you want to and make it work. Is it as efficient as it could be? Probably not. Does it work and you can make contacts? Yeah. Yeah, you can make contacts on a wet noodle if you really want to. But, if you're talking about a permanent installation, I would try to get as high as you can. But no, you don't have to have I know guys with hex beams that are 25, 30 feet in the air, which to me, that's not very tall. Some people may think that's really tall. But I've seen a guy with a hex beam on a 5-foot tower off the top of his house. Josh had that for a while, but I'm thinking of somebody here close to me. But the cool thing about HF is that a lot of times it's ground wave propagation, so you don't have to get it up really high. VHF, UHF, you want to be up as high as you can. HF is not so much that way, but having it 100 feet in the air is going to be more efficient than having it 20 feet in the air, but most people can't have a 100-foot tower at their house. I know I can't have a 100-foot tower,
well,
unfortunately.
It certainly affects your takeoff angle,
yes.
right? So, you know, the hex beams that I've seen typically are 20 meters and up. Am I right on that? Yeah.
Yes.
So 20 meters, you know, you're shooting for at least half a wavelength off the ground.
Right.
So if you can get, you know, 30 something feet off the ground with your hex beam, you're going to be performing pretty well. Correct. Because that's kind of your minimum height you want for 20 meters, and it's going to be an even greater, you know, fraction or multiple of wavelengths for the higher bands that are on that hex beam. So because they function on the higher bands, they're gonna do pretty well, even only, you know, like Don's saying, 34 to 40 feet off the ground.
Yeah, that's optimal.
Yeah. So there was a question from Dave in there. Can I paint an antenna to make it stealthy? Absolutely. I paint the wire I'm using is pretty small, and my neighbors don't care anyway. But the poles that I put up to support the antenna, I actually painted a matte kind of bluish gray, so that when you drive by and look up at them, they tend to blend into the sky pretty good.
The sky. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So absolutely, you can paint your antennas and help make them stealthy. Look for matte colored paints that generally match the background of what it's going to be silhouetted against, and that's going to serve you best.
Non-glossy, something that's not shiny, it's going to catch a lot of sunlight reflecting off of it. So that, good idea. Camo. Yeah, Chuck says camo. Sure, nice. Chuck, go ahead and paint your antenna camo. I'd like to see that when you're done with it.
Yeah. So a couple other comments in the chat. There was a note that you definitely want to use ladder line with your full wave loop. Absolutely. It's that's going to improve your tunability, and you may also need to experiment or test with different lengths of ladder line to figure out what's optimal. With any feed line, you have to be a little bit cautious with certain lengths. Sometimes the antenna likes it and sometimes it doesn't, particularly certain multiples of a quarter or half a wave. And then the Chuck had asked that I mention the half square. And the half square is one of my favorite portable antennas. It's a little on the heavy side. It's basically what it is are two vertical elements joined at the top by a half wavelength of wire. So two vertical elements, half a wavelength apart, and you can feed it at an upper corner as a 50 ohm feed point. That's what I typically do, just because it's a little easier without bringing any kind of ATU. But what that gives you is basically two phased quarter wave verticals with an inverted ground plane. That half wave across the top is your inverted ground plane, and you get pretty solid low angle gain out of that thing, and that's what I love using for DX efforts when I'm out playing with SOTA. Drawback is that I need two poles, so some extra weight there, but really high performing antenna.
That's what I was about to ask you. So if you're doing two verticals, what band is it, which is going to affect how high up you get it? And are you using trees or poles? You just answered that part. I guess I guess you have to find a flat part of the summit that you're on, right? You can't be on the side of a mountain, I guess, if you're trying to do that.
Yeah, but, not so much. It's got to be relatively flat, or at least, you know, you have to orient it across the contour of the slope. And it's not too hard to use a tree for one end if you've got trees handy. I typically just bring a couple of poles, and I usually bring that just for drive up summits, although I have carried it up to summits too, and two 31-foot poles and guy lines and everything are not particularly light. Performance is good.
Well, it's all about trade-off, I guess. It's cool to, you know, it's I would imagine that I've not a lot of summits. In fact, I've only done the one. There's a summit down south of me that Johnny, W5KV, Signal Search Johnny, and I have, we've been trading emails about going down there and activate that together. He's got a newborn, so he's like, yeah, my time's limited right now. So, but I'm going to try to get down there because I'm just like, man, I don't get to do that sort of stuff a lot just because of where I live. I mean, there's summits out west of me, but a lot of them are on private property and never been activated. You can't even get to them.
Yeah.
But I think it would be fun to experiment and, you know, say, okay, well, this one I packed as light as I could, but I wish I had this. And this one I packed everything that I could, and it was too heavy, and, you know, this kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure it depends on the summit you're going to. If you're going up 2,000 feet, it's probably a lot different than going up 6,000 or 8,000 feet, you know. So it's and it depends on how far up you can drive, I guess, how far you have to actually hike. But
Right.
you know, it seems to me like it would be. I wouldn't want to do the same thing every time. Let me put it that way. I wouldn't want to say, okay, I've got this radio and this antenna and this matching unit and this whatever extra, and this is my pack and this is what I'm taking every time. I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to experiment with it.
Yeah, it's really fun experimenting with different, you know, antennas like that. That half square, right? You know, part of the going back to the trade-offs with that. It's a monoband antenna. Generally speaking, you can tune it into submission on some other bands like 40, but not particularly effective. But it's a monoband antenna, and it's heavy. It's big. It's heavy. But performance is quite good. I forget what I was going to say. There's another antenna that I want to experiment with called a VP2E, Victor Papa 2 Echo, which you would think stands for call sign, but it's not. It's actually vertical polarized 2 element.
Oh.
And what it sort of looks like is an off-center fed dipole, but instead of, you know, dipole's typically a half a wavelength total length. This is a full wavelength total length, and you orient it in an inverted V, and you feed it part way up one of the V legs, and it results in a pretty low angle of radiation, kind of similar performance theoretically in antenna modeling to the half square, and it only requires a single support. I think it's like a dB or dB and a half down from a half square. It's more dependent on the ground. So it's going to be more variable than the half square is, but it looks like a pretty cool option that I really want to try out, you know, along that line of experimenting.
Yeah.
And see how it works.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's definitely it's kind of limitless the number of things you can do. I mean, you know, as we all know, some people tune up their lawn chairs or their gutters. I've seen it. There's a couple guys that live around me that tune up their rain gutters on their house and made an antenna out of it. So it's definitely something fun to do, something fun to tinker around with. Cool. Well, this has been a great discussion. I really I've learned a couple things myself actually. So because I've told people on my videos a lot, you know, I learn as much as I try to teach others, because in order for me to talk intelligently about something, I have to go learn it first. So it's a learning experience for me. Never stop learning. So it's always good. Cool, man. I shared your channel earlier. That right there. I'll share it again. There's cool. There's Adam's channel in the chat. You guys go subscribe to him and watch some really cool summit videos as far as just visually stunning. I really like the fact that you did some fishing and you caught the trout and you cooked it that night. That was right. I was like, oh yeah, I got to talk to this guy. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, the whole fishing thing and just the beautiful mountains up there where you were. I think that was that one that I was talking. You know that one I'm talking about. It was. Tell me the name of that summit again.
For the fishing trip one, or which one? So the fishing trip one was a Yosemite, northern Yosemite backcountry trip with my family.
Yeah.
And I did a couple of SOTA summits up there. One didn't have a name. The other one was Chittenden Peak. And that one is about 24 miles from the nearest trailhead, just way into the backcountry.
Wow.
And gorgeous land back there and some incredible fly fishing. It was fantastic.
Good. That would be fun for sure.
Yeah.
Before COVID hit, my wife and I had a trip planned to Hawaii again this year. We've been there 3 or 4 times. She's got tons of airline miles because she travels a bunch for her job. So we usually fly to Hawaii on airline miles, and we go out. We've been to Kauai a couple times and been to Maui once or twice. And okay, I lost your video for a second, but it's back now. Okay, you're good now. That's probably on my end. So I looked up. I was like, "Hey, let's go hiking when we're there." Of course, COVID screwed everything. We were supposed to go in May, and we haven't gone yet. But I looked up. We're going back to. We had a trip to go back to Kauai, the island of Kauai, and there's there's 2 parks that are with. I'm like, oh, that looks like it's far away. Well, the whole you can drive around the whole island in like an hour and a half. So it was like 30 minutes away. I was like, oh, we can do that. And then there's a summit here and a summit here, and I'm talking to her about this. I was like, we're gonna go here. We're gonna go here. I'm like, oh yeah. So getting the camera ready because that's Hawaii's beautiful. Oh yeah. So as soon as that lifts, I'm gonna do some stuff like that. I want to take my couple different QRP rigs. I'm gonna take that antenna that you sent me, and some really lightweight stuff because we're gonna have to get on a plane and all that. But gosh, I like I said a minute ago, I would love to be able to do some more stuff like that. There's just not places in Texas where you can really do that. But southern Oklahoma has some really good, really nice looking mountain ranges. So I've been kind of researching places to go up there, and probably going to do something like that upcoming. But anyway, yeah, y'all go check out Adam's channel. Really beautiful videos he's got there. Several of them are, and good. It's good to get to watch that and think, okay, how can I do that? You know, that's good ideas to spawn.
Yeah, so, and you know, a few comments on that. Experiment, go out and try things. That's how you learn. You're gonna fail a whole bunch of times like I did, and eventually it'll work right, and you're not gonna understand why, just like me. And then eventually you start putting the pieces together, and you're like, oh, that's why that one didn't work, and that's why that one worked.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just a constant learning experience. When I first started, you know, operating portable, I was looking. I built a couple little simple dipoles and other antennas, and I ended up buying a commercial antenna from LNR Precision, the NFEDS trail friendly for portable operation, because I thought
their stuff is top notch. I love LNR, the radios they have, the antennas, their stuff is really good. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. I think they passed off the antenna line to, I forget, one of the key companies. Somebody in the chat will throw it in there.
Okay.
At any rate, they made great stuff. And but when I bought that antenna, I thought, there's no way in hell I'm ever going to build something as nice as I can get, you know, in the commercial world. And, you know, fast forward through enough experimenting and you know, breaking things and making all kinds of stuff, and I'm at a point where the commercial world doesn't offer what I really want,
right? So
I build it instead. And I'm not special. You guys can all do that. It just takes some effort and practice and learning. And I hope you guys will take you know, what we talked about here and what I have in my other videos, learn from it, and go build your own antennas. There's nothing more satisfying than making contacts on stuff that you made.
No, that's that's I can imagine that is true. I'm trying to get this. Let's see. Let's see if I can get you. Oh, that's that. Well, that's no good. Okay, so let me add this real quick. I'm gonna just do a little bit of manipulation on the fly here.
Cool.
And there we go. Switch to that, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to switch over to the your Google Drive you sent me. So
cool.
Here are some stuff that Adam's built here. So tell me what this, you know, because I was wondering this myself. What is this wood wheel? What is this wooden wheel? Can you see what I'm? If you're watching on YouTube, it's probably a little bit delayed, but
yeah, I'll have to wait for it to pop up. I'm trying to think of what the wooden wheel might be. Is it a knob on a capacitor, perhaps?
It might be a knob. Yeah. It might be a knob.
So that's probably one of my my magnetic loops or small transmitting loop antennas, which is a pretty cool little class of antennas. that, you know, if we go back to those competing factors again, they're very small for what they do. That that antenna that I think you're looking at, that's attached to, works on 15 through 40 meters.
Okay.
And
well, this is not an antenna. This is like this looks like a matching unit.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a knob on a capacitor, on an air variable capacitor.
Okay.
And I'm fairly certain that's what you're looking at. It still hasn't popped up on my.
Has it not? Oh, you should have seen it by now. It's not that delayed.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. So okay, I'm looking at it now. Yeah. So that's a mix of a small air variable capacitor and 4 fixed silver mica capacitors. And so when you make a magnetic loop antenna, a small transmitting loop antenna, you tune it with a variable capacitor that has to be able to handle real high voltage. Even at QRP levels, you end up with super high voltages in there. And these antennas are extremely sensitive and very narrow banded. They're highly efficient, but the trade-off there is the bandwidth, right? So like if you want to change frequencies by 10 kilohertz, you got to retune the dang thing. It's that tight of a bandwidth. So so that's what this little box does. It the air variable capacitor gives you that fine tuning capability, and those fixed capacitors are attached to switches, and those switches let you change between bands. So let's say I need 110 picofarads for the 30 meter band. I've got let's say 105 picofarad fixed capacitor that I switch in, and then I use that 7 picofarad air variable capacitor to fine tune and tune to the exact frequency that I want.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's you thought you wouldn't use math in school. Guess what? So this okay, that picture didn't
to
come
be
up
honest, I didn't use any math in that.
Really?
No, there's some online calculators that help make some of the stuff simpler.
Yeah.
But I built a lot of that just through experimentation and hooking up a larger air variable capacitor to the antenna with temporarily, and then attached an antenna analyzer, and figured out what picofarad range I needed, and then narrowed that down to a fixed capacitor and the small air variable one. So yeah, the picture you're looking at there is the actual loop that I used. And part of my goal with that project was to build a loop antenna that didn't require a frame or any kind of supports. Typically the portable loops you see have a frame, and that outer ring is made out of coax. They use the coax shield as the conductor, and it makes for something that breaks down pretty nice, but it's kind of a pain, right? It's heavy, and you got to deal with the frame to hold it up. So I said, how can I make a self-supporting circular conductive loop? And I came to the conclusion that using a tent poles bent into a circle would actually work pretty well.
Wow.
I had to get a little creative because the anodized coating is non-conductive, and I had to figure out how to get them to conduct with each other and make an electrically conductive loop.
Yeah, there's that one picture with you with the goofy face was which is right up my alley, by the way. That was
right.
I guess the resolution on that picture is not as high as the other pictures you sent, because I can only zoom in that far on it.
Yeah, I think that one's cropped quite a bit.
Yeah, but there's a good close up of it where the actual feed point is right there, but then it's held by the top tubing, and I guess did you say it was a trekking pole or a
tent pole?
A tent pole, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's, I think, 6 or 8 segments of tent pole that I very carefully bent so they would form into a loop. And so it packs down really nice, just like your tent poles do for your tent.
Yeah. Good.
I built another one. I can't remember if it's in these photos or not, but I built another one out of bar stock aluminum that's 1/16 thick and I think half an inch wide.
Okay.
And it's in the photos there, bottom right.
This guy right here with the alligator clip on the end of it.
Yes, that's the one. So
yeah.
The alligator clip is kind of an alternative way to feed one of these antennas. You can feed them inductively with a smaller loop that's like about a fifth of the diameter of the outer loop. That was how I fed the tent pole one. You can also feed with, I think this is called a gamma match. And I adjust that alligator clip location for slightly for optimization on different bands. But this one I built to use with the mountain topper. It tunes on 20, 30, and 40 meters. It's 1 meter in diameter, so it's probably only about 3 to 5% efficient on 40 meters as far as radiation efficiency goes. But the dang thing actually works. And it weighs about 8.5 ounces, and it just sits on an upside down trekking pole. So,
sheesh, that's crazy.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely pretty cool. Like I said earlier, I mean, it's there's not a wrong way to do this. You can kind of do this out of anything. So it's really fun to
after seeing Josh's video on the lawn chair antennas, those lawn chairs have an aluminum frame to them.
Yeah.
And I really want to make a magnetic loop antenna out of a lawn chair. That's on my to-do list. Because it would actually work too.
Oh yeah, I bet it would. I bet it would work. I have no doubt. Gosh. So Kevin in the chat says, "What's your opinion on the MFJ 1886 receive-only antenna? I just ordered one along with my rotor to try to cut down my noise floor." Is that the loop? I think that's the MFJ receiving loop antenna.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with that one, so I unfortunately can't provide any productive comments on that.
Yeah, I'm not. If it's the one I'm thinking of, I have heard good things, but I've not actually tried one myself. So, it's kind of hard. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a different opinion, Adam, it's kind of hard to mess up a receive-only antenna. I mean, you can get more efficient and less efficient on a receive-only antenna, but your whole impedance and mismatch and SWR parameters come in only when you're transmitting. So really, you can hook you can literally go out and hook a coax to your metal gutter on your house and receive all kinds of stuff because the gutter goes around the whole house. So it's really kind of hard to mess up a receive-only antenna, but depends on what you're trying to do. Which is been my answer to everything these days. Depends on what you're trying to do. What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
So
I know some have done a decent amount of experimenting with receive antennas, particularly ones real close to the ground.
Yes.
For the purpose of avoiding basically, QRM, just our RFI generated by all the electrical devices we have running everywhere. So I've not gone down that rabbit hole much, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I think Callum has looked into it a little bit,
probably.
And I know I've watched some various videos that have some content regarding receive only antennas, particularly ones close to the ground.
Yeah, I have. They're in my garage right now, and I'm gonna be doing some reconfiguration behind the curtain here. I have a pair of Kenwood 599 twins, which if you don't know what those are, they're from the 60s, I think, and it's a separate transmitter and receiver.
Yeah.
So this was back when there was no such thing as a transceiver back then. It was a transmitting radio and a receiving radio. They've got a speaker that goes in between the two and a matching and a cable that connects to the two. So the receiver. So in other words, you have two antennas. I mean, you could do the whole thing with a duplexer if you wanted to, but the most efficient way, in my opinion, is to put a really nice receiving antenna on the receiver and then a transmitting antenna on the transmitter. And I'm thinking about doing some sort of receive loop on the receiver side of that radio because there's a lot of guys who use that loop. Somebody was talking about. It wasn't Chris. Somebody was talking about Chris. 2E0UKH. Chris from the digital analog ham YouTube channel, who's a member of the YouTubers bunch, talking about he uses a transceiver loop for HF inside of his apartment. They call it a flat in the UK.
Yeah.
Inside of his flat in the UK, and I know a guy out here that lives close to me who's a fantastic CW operator, and he does a receiving loop in his apartment out here, or I'm sorry, a transceiving loop in his apartment out here, and he does CW on a loop inside of his apartment, and he's like, man, I can hear stations all over the world if depending on what time of day it is and that kind of thing. So, loop antennas are fun. They're a neat animal unto themselves.
Yeah, I've used vertical delta loops for SOTA in the past. And they work pretty well. They're a single band antenna, so that's one of the trade-offs. But they are relatively efficient radiators, particularly when they're relatively close to the ground. They do pretty well. Couple pros and cons to loops. Particularly horizontal loops. Horizontal loops tend to be relatively quiet antennas as far as RFI goes. They for whatever reason seem to avoid the RFI issues a bit more than your average verticals or dipole style antennas. One of the drawbacks to them, from what I understand, is that in areas where you may have a lot of lightning, they tend to build up static more, and you can get some QRN from that. As well as potential hazards for your equipment. So that's definitely a consideration, and I think there are probably some ways to help mitigate that too, which might be worth considering.
For sure. Well, hey man, this has been an excellent discussion, Adam. We could probably keep going for another hour or two. If of course it's later for me than it is for you, I guess. But
sure.
But we've been going for an hour and a half, guys. If last minute questions real quick, go ahead and put them in the chat. But I don't want to go much longer just because it's too long on YouTube. I did want to welcome Kevin. I saw W6RIP in the chat. Thanks for being here, man. Appreciate you showing up. He was on Mount Pacifico with us last year when we went out there for Josh's meetup, and he's a fun guy to hang out with. And also somebody else I saw in there. Who else was it? I probably already said that. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Don, doesn't seem like it, Jason. I don't know what you're referring to. I said a lot of stuff just then. So, but yeah. So you guys definitely go check out Adam's channel. I've shared it a couple times. I'll share it again here. I think it's still in my clipboard. There it is. And check out his channel on K6ARK portable. Is it portable radio or is it just K6ARK radio? On YouTube.
K6ARK portable radio.
Portable radio. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew that was your logo, but I couldn't remember the YouTube channel. That was the portable word was in the YouTube channel. Anyway, I shared it in there. The link is in there. So, really appreciate everyone being here tonight. Adam, thank you very much. Really great information, great knowledge, and if they ever open up the airlines again, we're going to have to do another Summits on the Air expedition out there in California. I'm going to come out there and see you, I think. So, because I think that'd be a great trip. We should get 3 or 4 of us out there to go do something. There's several of you YouTuber guys out in California, so it'd be a fun trip to come out there and do something.
I'd totally be down to head down to the Ozarks or even Oklahoma. Maybe we can drag some of the Missouri boys down as well and do something there.
Well, those two guys, Sterling and Kyle, came out to LA the same time I did, and on the Summits on the Air that Josh set up. So yeah, we can definitely do something out here. We just got to find a place that makes sense to go to. I don't want you.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring you guys all the way out here and say, well, this summit here is 700 feet, so we can hike up here. And so anyway, it's all good. It's all good. We like it. So thanks, man. I really appreciate you being here tonight. I'll let you go. I got to do my super chat and my thank yous. And cool. I'll talk to you. YouTubers Bunch recording next Sunday. Hope you can make it then. And great having you on the stream tonight. We'll probably do it again. This was an interesting topic, and people are giving me really good feedback in the chat right now. So if you think about anything upcoming that you thought, oh, let's focus on this one subject. I'd love to hear from you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to join you again for something like this.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you being here tonight.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. See ya. All right, folks. That is that. Thank you for being here tonight. We've been going for an hour and hour and 35 minutes because the beginning of the stream jacked up and I tried something new and it didn't work. So I should save my new plans to be on my Wednesday streams instead of my really important Sunday streams. Guess what? Come January, I'm going to start doing these Sunday streams every week. I've been thinking about that for a while. I've been trying to think, what do I want to do here? Do I want to do this? Do I want to commit to doing that? And some weekends, probably the opening weekend of deer hunting season in Texas, quite frankly. I'm just going to say that right now. But probably some weekends I'll skip it. But, you know, generally speaking, 95, 97% of the time, I think I'm going to start going every Sunday, 7 p.m. Central Daylight or Central Standard, depending on what time of year it is. And so I want to know, what topics do you guys want to see? I've got a list of topics like this, but, you know, those came out of some of them came out of my head. Some of them were suggested to me. We've got the next 2 Sunday streams planned right now. Every other week. I'm going to keep going the first and third Sunday for the rest of 2020. I started that in January, and with the lockdowns and COVID and everybody being at home, it's been easier because I haven't been traveling. It's been easier to keep on that schedule. So I'm very thankful that I've been able to keep up with that schedule since January, because last year my schedule kind of got botched with I was trying to stream the first Saturday of every month in the morning, and that didn't work out very well. But yeah, there's a lot of people talking in the chat right now. And Hayden, Ham Radio DX in the house. Thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you showing up out there. Yeah, what's it? It's probably like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning out there. Maybe later than that. It may be like 10 o'clock in the morning out there. Hayden's in Australia. Hayden's got Ham Radio DX. He's got some really good videos on the IC705, because the IC705 was released in Australia before we got it. They've got about 3 or 4 hams in Australia, and we've got like 100 million in USA, but for some reason they released the radio there first. I don't know. That part was a joke a little bit, but the numbers were an exaggeration. Anyway, really, really great to have Adam on the show tonight. He is very knowledgeable when it comes to antennas and doing his own thing. He gets a lot of enjoyment about building his own antennas, which is something I just don't. I understand the desire, but I just don't find the enjoyment in it that he does. So it's really cool to bring someone with that much knowledge and enjoyment and enthusiasm onto the show to talk about it, because he's telling you stuff I could really never tell you. But special thanks to him. You guys be sure and go subscribe to him. So, as I said at the beginning of the stream, we are going to give away 2 t-shirts tonight. Your choice of size and style from shop.hamradio2.com. 2 winners. All you have to do is donate a super chat. It can be anything from $1 up. Okay? Those of you who donated $5 and $10, really appreciate you guys being here. But every super chat gets 1 entry. Right now I have 11 entries. Okay, so I'm going to give it another couple of minutes. I will go back over here. Let me find the right screen. There we go. Okay, so once again, as I said at the beginning, we have more people watching now than we did at the beginning. This coming Saturday, September 26th, the North Richland Hills Amateur Radio Club, which is out here just outside of Fort Worth, not too far from me, they're going to be doing a Zoom session for a general class upgrade. So they're going to go September 8:30 to 5:30 Central Time, Saturday, September 26th, and the following Saturday, October 3rd. He did say, I didn't say this up front, I didn't say this before at the beginning, he did say that he is going to run a testing session the following Monday or Tuesday. Okay, so those of you looking for remote testing, I've done several videos on the channel about remote testing. Hamstudy.org/sessions. You can find remote testing facilities. Online, doesn't matter where you live, you can test online from anywhere to anywhere. Okay, but hamstudy.org/sessions also has in-person testing facilities in various parts of the country. There's 2 of them in the North Texas area near me, but there's some in, like, I think Virginia, North Carolina, California. Plenty of in-person testing, but also plenty of remote testing. So hamstudy.org/sessions. But the North Richland Hills Club is going to do a 2 Saturdays in a row general class upgrade, September 26th, October 3rd, from 8:30 to 5:30. I am going to live stream that. I got permission from them just 2 days ago. I've got a meeting with them, a Zoom meeting with them tomorrow night to hammer out the details, so I'll be posting about that on my Facebook page, on my Twitter account, and on my YouTube Communities tab. So you guys be sure and watch all that. I will definitely promote that as much as I can once I have all the details. General class upgrade, those of you who are technicians and want to join a Zoom session where you can actually ask questions live, this is the time for you. If you don't care about that, I have a general class already on this channel in 9 different parts. I think each part is about an hour or so, in 9 different parts. Go to the front page, go to youtube.com/hamradio20. And on the front page of my channel, just scroll down, and the general class for 2018 to 2022, which is what the question pool exists for, is there. You can watch that right now. I get 5 to 15 people commenting on that class every week, and it's been up there since last November. So it's still a great question pool. So you can go watch that right now if you're the type of person that just learns better on your own, or you can join this North Richland Hills Zoom session that starts next Saturday. So more information, W5HP Whiskey 5 Hotel Papa at att.net. Like it says right there. Take a screenshot and be sure to hit that up if that's something that's interesting you. So Andy Cowley, thank you, sir. Thank you for the super chat. I'm going to put you in here. And hope that if you win, I can find a cheap way to ship to you, sir. So, Don. So Izzo's already in the drawing here. So I got Don Deagidio. Don, I know who you are, but I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. I should get some information from you on that. So, okay, so Richard Elias, got you in there. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat. And Kevin, K6ARK, thank you very much for the super chat as well. That's 15. That's 15 people. So, yeah, a name. I don't know if you've got your... last I spoke to you, I'm not sure if you got your technician yet. This is a general class. It's the upgrade from technician. Technician's where you want to go first. So just FYI, you're welcome to join the class, but you're going to have to do the technician first to get your first license. So just be aware of that. So, okay, guys, let's see. Let me go over here real quick. I want to do a drawing real fast, and then I want to thank my patrons. So, random number generator. And there. And there. Okay, so switch over here, random number generator. I have 15. Let me just read everybody real quick so that I make sure I don't miss anybody. Foster Bass, Don Izzo, W8NGT, W0RHP, KM9G, Peter B, N5SKT, KE4HZ Charlie, KI5KMQ, Tango Oscar Mike, Tom, got you in there. Sean Wieland, Andy Cowley, Don Deagidio, Richard Elias, and K6ARK. So we're going to do 2 drawings tonight. 2 people are going to win. And I've got 15 entries, so I'm going to change this to a 15. And I'm going to zoom in on that just a touch. I think I can... Yeah, there we go. How's that look? That looks better. Okay, so minimize that. Okay, I'm going to hit the button twice. And then the third... you know what? Forget it. Okay. I'm going to hit the button twice, and the first two winners are where it's going to be. So I don't want to look at it. Not that that makes any difference at all. So I'm going to hit it once. Number 7, hit it twice. Number 3. So 7 and 3. 7 is N5SKT. That will not ship very far. And 3 is W8NGT. So both of you have won a t-shirt of your choice in size, color, and style from shop.hamradio2.com. I think I know how to get a hold of both of you, but just in case, shoot me an email, kc5hwb@gmail.com. Don, you've got me in Discord. You can hit me up there too if you want. That's fine. But let me know that you got that, and shoot me an email with your choice, and we'll go from there. So 73 to everybody. I do want to one last thing. Let me switch over to this and here. No, that one. Okay, so I want to thank my patrons. Gosh, that did not work at all. How about like that? There we go. I want to thank my patrons tonight. Patreon.com/hamradio, guys. These are the people that keep the channel going. I have made some major updates to my Patreon channel because Patreon has been making some major updates to their system basically for all of 2020. They've done a lot of updates. They've done a lot of different features. So patrons of the second and third tier on my channel receive a 15% discount on shop.hamradio2.com all of the time. That's a permanent thing. I'm probably going to start. I used to try to do a newsletter, and I kind of slacked off on that because it was hard to get email addresses from Patreon and YouTube at the same time. So I'm probably going to start a monthly Zoom session. That's a private Zoom call with just me and the patrons. So that's going to be a fun thing to have. And patrons also get an extra private channel inside the Discord server. So I'd like to thank Park Cities Amateur Radio Club, Christopher Wiggins, Rob Mathinson, Michael, Andy Cowley. Andy, good to have you here tonight, buddy. Greg Roeder, Mike Adams, Todd Agostini, Robert Lyons, Craig Boyer, Dennis G, Oof Radio, KD9OOF, Richard Schwartz, Lewis Klein, Robert Bresman, Randall Hensley, Hawk Bennett, James Dowis, Paul Sweeney, LNX Guy, Bill Brady, David Kettrick, and Mike in Texas. You guys are the ones who keep the channel going. I want to try to grow the Patreon subscriber list, and I want to do something for you guys upcoming. So I'm working on a couple different things, and going to see where that takes us. Last thing I'll say before I shut it down, guys. 50,000 subscribers is right around the corner. Where did my screen go? Right there. Nope. Yes. Okay, I don't need that twice. Chrome, let's turn that off and go there. So 50,000 subscribers is right around the corner. I am at 48,500 right now, roughly. And when I get to 50, we're going to do a live stream and we're going to do a giveaway for a big radio. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I know what I'm shooting for. I know what I'm trying to get. You can probably guess. So I'm trying to get something going. But the guys at Gigaparts had a really good idea. So I'm going to be doing something with Gigaparts for an upcoming giveaway. So if I don't do it for the 50,000 live stream, I'm going to do something with them for Black Friday. So multiple giveaways upcoming, and it's going to be a fun ride. And I'm really excited about where this channel is going, and the fact that you guys are the reason that this channel exists. Y'all are the reasons that the channel exists. I put up a video a week and a half or so ago, about a week ago, that was a little bit sketchy. It was a little bit iffy. And you can guess what it is. If you watch my channel, you know what it's about. I do the videos for you. That's the bottom line. This is, I'm being as honest as I can. I like to laugh at myself because I think I'm much more funnier than I am. But I laugh at myself all the time, but because I'm funny and because I'm stupid both. I do the channel for you guys. If you guys ask a question, I'm going to answer it. Is my answer always going to be right? Probably not. Is my answer always going to be honest? Yes. I'm going to give you an honest answer. Okay, so so this channel exists for you. The channel is just over 5 years, about 5.5 years old at the time of this recording. I spent the first 2.5 years doing the channel for myself. And when I started to get really serious about YouTube, I started researching how to build a YouTube channel. And these days, I'm almost as passionate about YouTube as I am about ham radio. Almost. Not quite. A little bit more passionate about ham radio. But I started to get really serious about building a YouTube channel, and the one constant that I found from so many different people that you can find YouTube episodes and YouTube channels on YouTube about how to build a YouTube channel. It's kind of like Inception, right? It's the thing before the thing, the dream inside of the dream. So a lot of YouTube channels about how to build a YouTube channel. And the one thing that sometimes they disagree, but the one thing they all agree on is build an audience and do videos for your audience. Give your listeners what they want. Give your viewers what they want. So that's why I do. Eric, thanks, buddy. Hen Radio Concepts. Hen Radio Concepts is in the chat. Good to have you here, buddy. So I want to do videos for you because that's what I'm building the channel for. It's all about you, the viewer, at this point. Yeah, I'm going to do some videos for myself too because I like DMR better than some other modes, and I like these radios better than those radios, and that's cool. But a lot of the times I'm doing videos because users have asked me to do videos, or a lot of people ask me the same question over and over again. My very first video I ever recorded was because I was getting the same question over and over again about how to program a TYT TH9800. It's my first video, and the reason I made it is because I kept getting that question over and over again. So I was already responding to the audience at that point in time. So I want to thank you guys for being here tonight once again. Be sure to drop Adam a line if you know him. Thank him in Discord. He's in Discord with us. Send him an email. Subscribe to his channel. Go comment on one of his videos. Okay, he likes to see comments on his videos just like I do. I love comments on all my videos. Eric, Ham Radio Concepts, he likes comments on his videos too. So hit the thumbs up button before you leave if you don't mind. 73 to everyone. Have a good weekend. I hope some of you who are technicians will join the general class this coming Saturday, 6 days from now, September 26th, North Richland Hills. Email w5hp@att.net. Hope to see you there. Hope to see you in the YouTube chat while I'm live streaming it also. 73 guys, everyone have a good evening, and we will catch you 2 weeks from tonight for the next live stream on this channel. Everyone have a good evening.